What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and I'm going to be doing some Cyberdark combos and test hands. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is a deck that I've been playing a lot recently and it can summon out one of the most powerful fusion monsters ever created, Cyberdark and Dragon, which is just such a cool card. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name screwed for every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to our Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So this deck is super fun to be able to play because you can summon out all sorts of extremely powerful fusion monsters to your side of the field like Cyberdark and Dragon, which in my opinion is one of the most powerful cards ever created, if not the most powerful fusion monster ever. Because once you get it on the field, it's basically immune to everything, which is just really, really neat. And it also comes out at 5,000 attack points, which is really cool. This deck is also super nostalgic because you can summon out cards like Cyberdark Dragon, which is just such an awesome card. It's just really awesome to be able to put on your side of the field. But you guys know it's dad rule number one that you got to pile shuffle up the deck, because if you don't pile shuffle the deck, you run the risk of bricking. But now that we got the deck pile shuffled, let's go ahead and give it a quick shuffle and see what we can do for our first test hand, because this deck is just super fun to be able to play and just really neat for all the different combos that you can actually do with this deck. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for our first test hand. So we're going to draw into a copy of Infinite Impermanence. Cyberdark Realm, that's really good because that's already giving us a search and an additional normal summon. Our copy of Cyber Dragon Hurts, a copy of Cyberdark Edge, and a copy of Cyber Dragon Core. So this is actually a pretty good hand right off the bat. We have our best normal summon in the hand, and we already have one of the two pieces that we need to open up to be able to summon out Cyberdark and Dragon. So what we're going to do with this particular hand is we're going to normal summon out the copy of our Cyber Dragon Core, and we're going to grab Cybernetic Horizon from our deck to our hand, which is a really powerful card that's going to help us get our Cyber and Dragon from our extra deck in the grave. So we're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck. We're going to go back in here quite a few times for this particular combo. So let's go ahead and activate the copy of the Cybernetic Horizon, and let's send from our hand to the graveyard a copy of, say, Cyber Dragon Hurts and a copy of our Cyber Dark monster from the deck. Let's go ahead and send a copy of Chimera from our deck. Actually, let's send the copy of Edge. Let's send the copy of Edge, and let's go ahead and send from our deck to the graveyard a copy of Nashter. Let's go ahead and send those to the graveyard because that's going to get us more plays, because now we can actually use the ability of this card to be able to send those two cards to the graveyard, and then you basically send Cyberdark or Cyber in Dragon from your deck to the graveyard, which is just such a cool effect. And then you get to add a dragon or machine cyber monster from your deck or to your hand, which is pretty cool to be able to search out those cards, because you can actually use this card to be able to search from your deck a really powerful Cyberdark card, which is Cyberdark Cannon. Cyberdark Cannon is really good because you can actually discard this card to get an additional search, which is going to help us out a lot to be able to get that additional search from the deck. And we're going to need to get 5 Cyberdarks in the grave. So once we get that card in the grave, we're also going to send a copy of Cyber in Dragon from our extra deck to the graveyard, which is already going to get us set up because we have one in the grave. We can then use the effect of our copy of Cyberdark Cannon to be able to give us a search of a machine Cyberdark monster. So we're going to use that effect to be able to give us an additional search of our copy of Chimera, which is really good to just instantly get to in our hand because now we're sitting at 2 in the grave and 1 in the hand. We can then use the effect of our copy of our Cyberdark Realm to give us an additional search from our deck to our hand of a Cyberdark monster. So I'm actually going to search out from the deck that when this card is activated, you can add any Cyberdark monster from your deck to your hand. So we're going to actually search out a copy of Claw from our deck to our hand just to get us an additional monster in the grave. So we're going to activate that copy of Claw to be able to search out a Cyberdark Speller Trap, which I'm actually going to search out a copy of Cyberdark Invasion, which is pretty good to just instantly get to. And at this point, we're actually sitting at 3 pieces in the grave. You might be looking at this and going, where's the last one? How are we going to get to the last one? Well, that's easy. Chimera. So we're actually going to use the effect of our realm to be able to give us an additional normal summon, which is our copy of Chimera. Discard the copy of Impermanence from our hand to be able to search out a copy of Power Bond from our deck to our hand. which is really neat. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and link summon, which is really cool about this. You can actually link these two together to be able to summon out a copy of Cyber Dragon Sigurd, which is a cool card to be able to put on the field. So once we summon out a copy of Cyber Dragon Sigurd to the field, we do have the copy of Chimera that's in the grave, and its effect will go off, letting us send an additional Cyberdark from our deck to the grave, which is our copy of Cyberdark Horn. It doesn't matter which one you send. I usually just send a copy of Hornkeeler Edge, whichever one I don't already have in the graveyard. And then our copy of our Power Bond can be used to be able to fusion summon into a copy of Cyber Darkness Dragon. So we're going to use the copy of Power Bond at this point to be able to put 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of our Cyberdark monsters into a copy of Cyber Darkness Dragon. And it will come out with double attack points, so it'll come out at 4K, which is really cool to be able to put on the field, and its effect will activate, equipping onto it our copy of Cyber End Dragon. Now, the neat thing about this is we can actually tribute this on our side of the field to be able to put a copy of Cyber Dark End Dragon on the field, and we have Cyber Dark Invasion in our hand to be able to set on the field, which is one of the best fields that this deck can actually establish, which is super cool. But your copy of Cyber Dark End Dragon is an extremely powerful card because it has a really good effect that it must be fusion summoned or special summoned by tributing a level 10 or lower Cyber Dark fusion monster equipped with Cyber End Dragon. And it's unaffected by your opponent's activated effects, and once per turn, you can equip one monster from either player's graveyard to this card, and this card can attack a number of times during each battle phase up to the number of cards equipped to this card. So we can actually use its effect to be able to instantly equip the copy of Cyber End Dragon back to it, but you can actually establish multiple negates on the field if you don't go into this card and you just leave your copy of Cyber Darkness on the field, which is really neat. Now, this card is huge when it's on your side of the field because it's actually sitting at 8,000 attack points, which is really cool because it has double attack points, putting it at 4,000, and it also has a 4,000 attack point monster equipped to it. You also have the copy of Invasion that will let you put additional cards onto your copy of your Cyber Darkness Dragon with its effect, which is really cool to be able to do during the following turns to get this card multiple negates, which is really neat. Or you can just go for the style points and summon out your copy of your Cyber Dark End Dragon, which is so cool to be able to just summon to your side of the field. Now, we go into the next turn and we draw for turn. Let's go ahead and see what we get. And we're going to get a copy of Druis Worm. Now, we can flip this card up, which is really neat. And once per turn, you can use the effect to be able to target a card and equip it to your copy of your Cyber Dark monster. So we're actually going to use its effect to be able to equip our copy of Darkness Dragon onto it. And you can summon out the copy of the Druis Worm by just banishing a card. You can wait on this card's effect and actually summon out the Druis Worm by banishing a card from the graveyard, which all of these will actually be banished instead of being in the graveyard because you use them with Power Bond. They will not be in the grave. So let's go ahead and banish a copy of our Nashter that we sent to the graveyard. And once we do summon out that copy of our Druis Worm, we can then use it as a link material if we want to go in for another card. If you want to go in for something like an IP Masquerena, which is kind of neat to be able to go into, especially if you just normal summon out the copy of Hertz, because we do have that downward pointing arrow, because now we can send a monster for that our opponent controls to the graveyard off the effect of the Druis Worm, which is really neat. Now we can use the effect of our copy of our Cyber Dark Invasion, and this is one thing I love about this deck, is the interaction with Druis Worm with this particular build. Because this card is now giving it an additional 1,000 attack points, and it has 2 materials giving it 2 attacks per turn, so this card can actually attack twice, which is really cool about this deck. I love that about this deck. It's so cool to be able to do with this particular card. The interactions that you can get with your copy of Druis Worm, where when this card touches the graveyard, even if it's equipped to a monster, it will send an additional special summon monster to the grave, which is really cool. So it's essentially you have multiple send to graveyard effects, which is really neat. So let's go into the next test hand and see what we can do for that particular one. And make sure that when you do activate that Power Bond, you actually banish the materials. That is something that you want to make sure that you do. We did banish these off the Power Bond to be able to go into our copy of Cyber Dark, not including the copy of Nashter. Let's make sure we didn't put any of our cards that are going in the extract back into the deck, which I don't believe we did. And let's go ahead and see what we can do for the next one. And something also that you need to make sure, that's like dad rule number 4. Make sure that you don't shuffle any of your extract cards into your deck. It's very important to do. as you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Because that's just not good. You don't want to draw into a copy of Cyberdark End Dragon. You might want to, but you don't need to. So make sure that you get those out before you go into your next duel. So let's go ahead and shuffle it up and see what we can do for our next test hand. So we're going to go to quick shuffle and see what we can do. So we're going to go ahead and cut the deck right there and see what we can do. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Cyber Dragon. You don't want to see this card in your opening hand, but it is a one of in the deck. We're going to draw into a copy of Cannon, Cyber Emergency, that's pretty good. Another Cyber Emergency, that's not so good. And a copy of Claw. This is not too bad because we basically have the same combo all over again, which is really neat. And we actually have kind of a better hand because we do have both of these that'll get us a double search. So we're going to go ahead and activate the copy of Cyber Emergency, which is going to get us directly to a copy of our copy of Cyber Dragon Core. Now once we get to that, we can normal summon it out to our side of the field, use its effect on our side of the field to be able to search out a copy of Cybernetic Horizon again, and then we can go ahead and activate the effect of Claw, discarding it, which that's one, and we're going to get a search of a Cyberdark spell or trap, which is going to help us out a lot to be able to get that Cyberdark spell or trap, which I'm probably going to grab Realm from my deck to my hand instead this time, because we don't have a way to get to Invasion with this hand, I believe. So we're going to shuffle it up this time, and once we do, we're going to go ahead and activate the effect of our Cyberdark Cannon. And sometimes with this particular deck, you just won't get all the cards to be able to just go in for those plays. We're going to use the effect of Cannon, and we're going to search out a copy of Chimera, which is pretty good to just instantly get to that copy of Chimera. And then we're actually going to activate a copy of Cybernetic Horizon. Cybernetic Horizon is really good because we're going to send that copy of Cyber Dragon from our hand to the graveyard and a Cyberdark from our deck to the graveyard, which we're going to send a copy of our Horn to the graveyard, and we're actually going to get a search from the deck, which I'm just going to grab a copy of, say, these are actually once per turns, which is a little bit of a downside. Let's just grab a copy of Edge, which is actually going to get us 4 of the pieces, and we actually have a normal summon as well, which is really, really good. We have to grab the opposite one that we send from our hand, which is a little bit of a downside, but that's totally fine, because it has the ability that basically you send 2 dragon and or machine monsters with different attributes from your graveyard, 1 each from your hand or deck, and add 1 machine cyber monster from your deck to your hand, and if you do, you send a machine cyber monster from your extra deck to the grave. So we're going to go ahead and use the effect to be able to send Cyber End Dragon to the graveyard, which is going to help us out a lot. We do have that extra spell card in the hand, which is going to help out quite a lot with this particular hand. Activate our copy of our Realm, and once we activate our copy of Realm, we're going to use the effect to be able to actually grab another piece, which is going to be Cannon. Yeah, we're going to grab Cannon from deck 10 because we can use it during the following turn, and it will set us up for our copy of another card. So right now at this point, we're going to go ahead and normal summon out the copy of our Chimera. Because of our copy of Realm, we do get a double normal summon. The first, our turn normal summon is Core, and then the effect of Realm will give us an additional normal summon of a Cyberdark, which is our copy of Chimera. We can then use Chimera's effect, discard the copy of our Cyber Emergency to be able to search out a copy of Power Bond, which is perfect to be able to grab from our deck to our hand, because now we're pretty much set up. We're going to link these two together, summon out our copy of Sigurd, and then the effect of our copy of Chimera will go off, and we're going to send from our deck to the graveyard a copy of our Cyberdark Keel. Now, once we send our copy of Cyberdark Keel to the graveyard, we pretty much are set up because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the grave set up for our copy of Power Bond that we can activate. Fusion all of these together because we do have the 5 different ones in the grave. And once we do that, we can go in for our Cyber Darkness Dragon, which is so cool to be able to go into because we're basically just going to immediately equip it with our copy of Cyber End Dragon. That's just so cool and how consistent it is to be able to pull that off. And it's really easy too, because now we can just tribute this card and summon out a copy of the Cyber End and then equip it to this card, which equip the Cyber End to the Cyber Dark End, which is going to give us an attack on a monster, which is pretty cool because now we have a 5,000 attack on monster that's basically immune to everything that your opponent does, which is really neat. So once we pass over to the opponent and they pass back over to us, we're going to go ahead and draw, and we're going to draw into a copy of Hertz. You really don't want to see Hertz in the hand, but we've already sent that Cyber Dragon to the grave, so it's fine. We're going to use the copy of Cannon in our hand to be able to discard to the grave to give us a search of another Cyberdark monster that is a Machine, search out the copy of Chimera, and then we can actually normal summon out the copy of Edge to our side of the field, and Edge will equip our copy of Cannon. This is really neat and actually a cool interaction because your copy of Cannon has a really neat ability that when damage calculation, if a monster equipped with this card battles, you can send a monster from your deck to the grave, which is going to start filling up the graveyard again for the effect of your Chimera, which is really neat for this particular build. You could have added as well the copy of Claw instead, which would have changed up a little bit because you could have got Invasion. It's a little bit slower, but you could have gone for that instead, which would have been really neat. But still, this being able to attack directly is super helpful. And then the effect of the Cyberdark in will equip the copy of the Cyberdarkness Dragon to it, giving it an additional attack because now we have 2, so we can attack twice, so we can do double attack and then attack directly. But you're probably already attacking directly anyways because this is getting through both opponent's monsters, which is really cool. So let's go ahead and do one more test hand and see what we can do with this deck, because as you guys can see, this deck is super consistent and really fun to be able to play with because it's just super easy to pull off some of the hands in this deck. And hopefully we can actually draw in a Clockwork Knight, and I'll show you guys a really cool play. So, the really neat thing about Clockwork Knight in this deck, I'm going to show you guys really quickly just in case we don't draw into it. The really cool thing about Clockwork Knight in this deck is because if you have cards like Clockwork Knight and a copy of Cyber Dragon Core, you can actually get rid of your opponent's field, which is really neat with some super powerful cards like your copy of Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon or your copy of Mega Fleet, which is super cool about this deck because you have a Cyber Dragon on the field. This is making every monster on the field machine, and then you can basically just get rid of your opponent's monster in the extra monster zone, or you can gobble up their entire field into a copy of the Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon, which has just added so much plays into this deck for the copy of Clockwork Knight. If you guys would like to see the full deck profile for this deck, definitely check out the deck profile down in the description down below. But that's a super neat combo if you draw into both of these cards, because basically you're just going to deal with your opponent's field, especially if you're going second with this deck. So we're going to go ahead and shuffle it up and see what we can do for one last test hand, see if we can pull off something insane with this particular deck. We're going to give it a good shuffle. You're probably going to want to pile shuffle this deck because you will run into sometimes, if you just keep playing and not pile shuffle, that you will draw into like 5 Cyberdark monsters unless you're really good at shuffling. But let's go ahead and see what we can do for this last test hand. So we're going to go ahead and draw a copy of Chimera, Power Bond, see, that's what I'm talking about right there, a copy of Cannon, another copy of Cannon, see, there we go, we're starting to brick, and a copy of Realm. This is okay, but we don't have really a good way to get to Horizon, but this is a fine example of why I say you need to pile shuffle. We actually do have kind of sort of a way to get to Horizon, which is kind of neat, but I think you can still pull off Cyberdark End Dragon. We're going to try to. So what we're going to do is we're going to activate the copy of Realm, and we're going to search out a copy of Claw, which will get us to a copy of our other cards. So we're going to go ahead and use this in our hand to be able to add from deck to hand Cybernetic Horizon. So we're going to get to that card still in our hand, and we have 2 of our power plays in our hand. We don't have the copy of the other card that we need, but I still think we can pull this off. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and use the copy of Cannon to be able to get us an additional search into another Cyberdark monster, which I think that means we have 5 in play because we have these 3 and then 2 in grave. I still think we can pull this off. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to go ahead and use the copy of the Horizon to be able to send a copy of Cannon to the graveyard and a monster from the deck, which I'm actually going to send from the deck to the graveyard our copy of, let's send a copy of a different one. Let's go ahead and send, where is it? Hertz. We're going to send Hertz to the graveyard, and once we do, we can actually use the effect to send an additional card from our extract to the graveyard, which is going to be the Cyberdark End. That was a good save. And we're going to go ahead and add from deck to hand a copy of Core, and then off the Hertz effect, we'll actually get a Cyber Dragon, which is really neat. So at this point, we do have a normal summon, which is really neat. So we're going to actually normal summon out the copy of Core. And actually, after we normal summon off that Core, we're going to get an additional search from the deck, which is going to be our copy of Invasion, which is going to be pretty good to just instantly get to that copy of Invasion because it lets us add that Cyberdark spell or trap. Now we can get that additional normal summon off of Realm, and once we do, we can actually summon out the copy of Chimera. Chimera will discard the copy of Power Bond, and we do play 2 Power Bonds in the deck, so we're going to use the effect so that we can get that Banish from Graveyard effect to be able to fusion summon, and once we do, we grab that Power Bond from the deck, And after we get Power Bond, we're basically set up because we have 3 in the grave, 1 in the hand, and 1 on the field. But we can actually keep the 1 in the hand because we're going to link these 2 together and summon out a copy of Seeger. Once we summon out that card to our side of the field, we actually get the effect of Chimera in the graveyard to send an additional Cyberdark from the deck to the grave, which we're actually going to send a copy of Horn to the grave, and we're going to shuffle up the deck. So after we send that card to the grave, we are now completely set up. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the grave of Cyberdark monsters. We can Power Bond right here and summon out to our side of the field the Cyber Darkness Dragon. It just takes 5 Cyberdark monsters. Doesn't matter if they're the same, doesn't matter if they're different. Just has to be 5 Cyberdark monsters. We're going to banish those from the grave, summon that card out to the field, and we get the copy of the Cyber End Dragon equipped to it, which is pretty cool. We can then set to our side of the field the copy of Invasion, and if you want multiple negates if you're going first, this is an option just to leave this card on the field. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and pass over to the opponent. You can make the copy of Cyber End Dark End Dragon, but this card is 4K, which is pretty neat. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and pass over, draw into our turn, which we can flip this card up, and then use effect to be able to equip a card to it, which can be any card. We're just going to equip the copy of Core to it, doesn't matter. And we're going to draw for turn, which is the copy of the Cannon. We can then use the effect of Cannon to give us an additional search, which will get us a additional card, which is going to be pretty good. Grab a copy of Realm. We don't want to activate that Realm because it will clog up our zones. Normal summon out the copy of Edge, and then use the effect of Edge to be able to equip Claw. And the really neat thing about Claw and Edge being together is because you can actually do this. When this card attacks and it does inflict damage to your opponent, you can send a monster from your extract to the graveyard. So you can send something like an Elder Entity Nist, or you can send something like a Garura, or even Abyss Dragon to get something like an Overload Fusion as well. So these are your main 3 targets you're going to be sending to the graveyard off the effect of your Claw. Either get a draw, get a fusion, or get a copy of Nist to pop a card. We're going to send the Nist to get a pop, and we're going to actually pop a card on the field and then go in for game with our copy of Darkness Dragon. So even with that hand getting a little bit of a clog, we still have an absolutely broken field, which is really cool, and I love that about this deck. Even with a not so great hand, you can still pull off the insane, which I love Cyberdark. I've been playing this deck a lot recently, and it's just super, super fun. So I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Cyberdark before, you definitely should give the deck a try. And definitely check out the profile down in the description down below. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's put that copy of Chimera on the top. And anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad. And we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.